Welcome to For Sale by Owner Secrets Module 2. My name's Tim Brooks, and today we are going to be covering one of my favorite topics, your scripts and dialogues. First, I want to go over a few things of how I want you to think about your script. A lot of times when agents think of scripts, they immediately are repulsed and think, oh, I don't want to give some sort of canned speech or canned script. They never sound natural. They're always kind of goofy a little bit. And in this case here, I want you to start thinking about your scripts, specifically the one we're going to go over today, as a structure. It's the thing that gives your conversation purpose and structure, like a GPS. You know your starting point, which is when you say hello on the phone, and it's going to allow you to go through in a structured way to get to your destination, which is the listing appointment itself. Now, there are different sections to this script. Now, the sections are all connected to each other, and each one leads to the next section, but the sections do have to be learned and internalized independent of one another, which is why I've put each section on its own page so that you can learn it and internalize it independently. Each section accomplishes a specific task which the future sections of your script are going to rely on, so you can't skip them, and you have to go in order. If you leave a section out, it's like using your GPS with an entire section of the map missing. I also want you to think about the importance of rapport. This script is designed to keep you in rapport with that seller at all times. The moment you fall out of rapport or out of alignment with that seller, immediately their defenses go up and they're going to shut you down. So rapport and having rapport is so important. And rapport isn't just talking about things in common and wasting their time. Rapport is simply staying in alignment with the seller's goals and needs and having the seller also understand that you're in alignment with them. So you stay in rapport. Among those things, you can never make the seller wrong, and you can never make the seller feel foolish either or confrontational. And this script is going to walk you through, and I'm going to point out the different sections that are specifically designed to keep you in rapport as you go down the road of the sale. One other thing too with your script is it is important that you be closing when you go through a script or a dialogue with a seller. At some point, you have got to close them on the appointment. If you have an entire conversation with a seller and never ask for the appointment, the entire conversation was useless, both for you and for the seller. If you don't set an appointment with that seller and list their home for them, you cannot help them. And it's very likely some other agent is going to be speaking to them or setting an appointment with them. And if it's a bad agent, they can really hurt the seller. So if you care about that seller, it's very important that you close them for an appointment at the end of your scripts and dialogues. I also want to talk to you about the importance of trial closes. I like to use certain words and phrases in all of my scripts, and one of those is a trial close. You'll usually hear me say things like, does that make sense? Or does that sound like a plan? Whenever I'm going through some sort of instruction or setting an appointment or proposing something to a potential buyer or seller, I always use trial closes to make sure, one, that they're paying attention and that I'm keeping their attention. Two, that they're staying with me. And I can also tell, let's say when I say, does that make sense? If they say yes, I know that they're with me, and that's a trial close. It means they're saying yes, they're interested in what I'm saying. Or if I make a proposal and I say, does that sound like a plan? And they say yes, that was really a very subtle trial close, where if they object in some way, then I know at that point, oh, okay, they are not closed on the idea, and I have to circle back and then find out what it is that they might be objecting to, or they don't understand or need more information on. So trial closes. My personal favorite trial closes are, does that make sense, or does that sound like a plan? Your tonality is also very important as you are going through your script with the seller. It's important that you don't sound, first of all, like you're reading an actual script. That's why you want to memorize, practice, and internalize the script so that you can say it naturally and in your own voice and in your own tone, and also know how to use tone. You have to know how to use a curiosity tone. You need to know how to use an expert tone. You need to know how to use a friendly tone and a non-threatening. All of these different little tonalities and the hand gestures that you normally would associate with them, you need to master those and be able to, and that's why I like to use my hands. Even when I'm on the phone and they can't see me, they can see you even though they can't through the phone. So I use hand gestures to help enunciate that tonality of, say, curiosity, or let's say I say something like, oh no, real quick, and I put my hands up and back a little bit. The tonality comes out of your mouth and they can hear it through the phone. So it's much more authentic when you're delivering a script. I've included a quick reference at the beginning of the script just so you can see what the different sections are and refer to them, because you'll probably have your script all printed out and all of the pages kind of in front of you rather than in order. Usually when I'm calling and my script is more than one page, I'll have all of the pages actually laid out. The first section is going to be your introduction to the seller. The second section is going to be the cooperating with brokers section. Then you're going to have the third section, which is flexibility on price. The fourth section is item of value. The fifth section is the selling without an agent to save money section. The sixth section is commission. Seventh section is how long will you try to sell without an agent? And the eighth section is the closing sequence. Section 1, the introduction. Hi, this is Tim with Keller Williams Realty. I was calling about your property for sale on Elm Street. Is that home still available or did you get that sold? A very short section right here. The purpose of it is just to establish who you are. They're probably hoping it's a buyer. So you're letting them know you're an agent, but it kind of dangles that you're inquiring about the home somehow. They're probably hoping that you have a buyer, and you're asking them a question immediately so it gets them into a conversation with you without them just kind of hanging up or blowing you off. Now, Jordan Belfort, the Wolf of Wall Street, taught the 4-second rule, where you have to, in the first 4 seconds of a phone conversation, establish yourself as sharp as a tack, enthusiastic as hell, and a force to be reckoned with, or an expert. So your tonality has to establish that when you call and when they pick up the phone. You're also going to have a little bit of curiosity in your voice also. Is the home still available or did you get that sold? You've got to sound somewhat curious in your tonality or adopt a curious tone during that introduction. Section 2, cooperating with brokers. I know you've been getting a ton of calls, so I just had a couple quick questions about the house. I'll be really brief. Would that be all right with you? Let me ask you, are you cooperating with brokers if we had a buyer for the home? I've got several buyers interested in your area. Is it all right if I add your property to our list of inventory? Can you tell me a little bit more about the house? Just curious, when the home sells, where are you planning on going next? Are you staying local or leaving the area? Oh, really? What's in Jacksonville? Family? A job change? Notice in the cooperating with brokers section, I use a pattern interrupt here. Notice I say, let me ask you. Usually I'll say, let me ask you, or some other form of pattern interrupt to just capture their attention for a brief moment. Because usually in some of these conversations, a seller's either trying to figure out how to get you off the phone or they're thinking about something else to say, and that just captures their attention and interrupts that pattern for just a brief moment so that you can then ask them a question with their undivided attention or make some sort of proposal without the conversation being distracted with them thinking about something else. This section also dangles the possibility that you can help them, and they are interested in being helped. They're interested in a buyer, not an agent. So if you can help them, you can capture their interest. This section also establishes that they're willing to pay a commission for a buyer. That is very important because you're going to be using that in the commission section of this script later on. I've got several buyers interested in your area. This line here allows them to see you as potentially helpful, and it gets them used to saying yes to you. And it's very important. The more you can get them shaking their head or saying yes to you when it's time to close for the appointment, they're used to saying yes to you. It's very important. Can you tell me a little bit more about the house? You have to be really curious and really interested. Don't just do what most agents do, how many bedrooms and baths and square footage. Really start asking about the bedrooms, about the flooring, about the finishes in the bathroom, whether it's upgraded or not, if there's any nice sections, say in the backyard for leisure time and things like that. This is important because this is one of the areas where you're going to be building rapport with them, and people are interested in those that are interested in them. So this is where you're going to be building a bit of rapport. It's very subtle, but you'll see the conversation's just going to go wide open once they start talking about the house. Just curious, when the home sells. So this line here, starting out with just curious, disarms them. And I usually do the hand motion too, just curious. This disarms them when asking more personal questions, so it doesn't feel like an interrogation or prying. There's sometimes agents just start asking intrusive or invasive questions, and it can seem like an interrogation. And if you do it that way, you'll fall out of rapport. So to disarm them, I always start out, just curious. There's something about that that allows them to tell you more personal information. But it's very important that you ask that question, because that's when you're going to find out their motivation and time frame. You're always going to go back to their motivation whenever a potential client gets stuck on the numbers, especially in the listing presentation itself, when they don't like the price that the house should be listed at or something like that. Always take them back to their motivation. Section 3, is there any flexibility in price? How much are you asking for the home? Great, how do you determine that price? If I have a buyer who wants to make an offer, is there any flexibility in that price? What do you think the best you could do is? Do you think you could come off of that price by $25,000 if they were ready to go right now? We're asking them how much they're asking for the home again because we're setting up a frame. They probably already told us right away when they first answered the phone. They probably spit out all of this information already. Even if they told you, I want you to ask again or just reconfirm it. So you're asking $375,000. Is that right? If they already told you, or if they didn't tell you, ask the question direct. How much are you asking for the home? This establishes the price because you're going to be using that later on. You don't want to make any assumptions about that. Great. How did you establish your asking price? That line there shakes the confidence of the seller in their price. When you ask that, how did you determine that? There's a good chance they just went on Zillow, or it might just be what they want for the house, and it might not have any factual basis in the price at all. And just simply by asking them how they determined it, internally, it will shake their confidence a little bit in that price. But you say, great, because you want to stay in rapport, right? So even though you're asking that question that they might not feel 100% confident, you still need to stay in rapport, and you never want to make them wrong. So if I have a buyer who wants to make an offer, is there any flexibility in the price? This is your first soft attempt to chip away at the price, and it further shakes the seller's confidence in that price. It establishes that the seller is willing to give up money. Guess what the answer usually is to that question? Usually it's something like, maybe a little bit, maybe we could come off $10,000, $15,000. Usually it's a wishy-washy answer that they don't want to commit to, which is why the next two lines exist. So then we go a step further. What do you think the best you could do is? This line here is your second attempt at a price reduction. It's a little bit more direct, and it has a bit of a tone of a negotiation. It also implies that you have a buyer that you're kind of soft negotiating on their behalf. If they don't give you a specific amount at this point of what they're willing to come off, or what do you think the best you could do is, if they're still a little bit wishy-washy, we go to the next line, which is, do you think you could come off that price by, say, $25,000 if I've got a buyer ready to go right now? This is our third attempt if the second attempt there didn't get a specific or large enough response. It's also our final setup for the commission section, which comes later on. This is actually, we're setting a trap right here that we're going to spring in the commission section of the script. So it's important that you get a specific number here because you're going to use that number later. Section 4, item of value. This section here sets up sending the for sale by owner seller a video to give them, and it gives them something of value, and it sets the relationship, giving you a reason to follow up. And it's something that they'll perceive as useful in helping them sell it on their own. Well, it looks like you've got a great home, and I think you could probably get it sold if you can put the time in. I have something that might help you. It's a video that'll show you how to set up and schedule your showings, qualify your buyers. You don't want a bunch of random unqualified people coming through your house at inconvenient times for weeks on end. It'll show you what marketing attracts real buyers and what's a waste of money. It's going to show you how to prepare and present the home, which photos to use, etc. I'll also send you a link to my marketing page that shows you all the marketing that I use. It'll give you an idea of the marketing tools and techniques I use to attract the highest paying and most qualified buyers in today's market. I want to help you with that because there's a good chance you can probably do it. And then if for some reason in a month or so, if you decide to list it with an agent, I'd like to be that agent. Does that make sense? With your permission, I'll follow up in a week or so to see how you're doing, if that's all right with you. Okay, now let's break this down line by line. Well, it looks like you've got a great home, and I think you could probably get it sold if you could put the time in. This line right here puts you in alignment with the seller's goals. Remember, we talked about that with rapport earlier. This is going to keep you in rapport after asking about the flexibility and price in the previous section. So even though the previous section sounded a little bit like a negotiation and they came off their price by $25,000 or so, you have to get right back into rapport with them, which is what this section is doing. The helpful video section right here establishes further rapport. It gives you a reason to follow up, and also it lists all of the tasks that the seller is going to have to do on their own. It's going to plant a seed in the seller's mind that they won't necessarily want to do all of those tasks once you start listing them out like that. It's kind of like somebody who wants to fix their transmission on their own. I can give them a video that's going to show them in detail how to fix every part of their transmission, what tools to get, what different parts they're going to need to order. And it's going to be very helpful to them if they want to fix their own transmission. But 9 times out of 10, once they're done watching that video, they're not going to want to fix their own transmission. It's going to seem easier to just go bring it to a mechanic, right? This is the same idea. Our video is going to walk them through all of the tasks and things that they're going to need to do, kind of how to do it and setting this up. And really there's a big list there, and it's the same principle. By the time they're done watching it, they'll know how to do it, but they're probably not going to want to do it. So that's also one of the benefits of sending them this particular video that I use. I'll also send you a link to my marketing page that shows you all the marketing that I use. It'll give you an idea of the marketing tools and techniques I use to attract the highest paying and most qualified buyers in today's market. So I actually have a web page that shows all of my marketing, all of the bonuses and things that I give to a seller, all of the tools that I use, the video, the 3D imaging, the dollhouse view, the VR stuff, all of that stuff. It lists it all out. So I actually push them to that web page. What it really is it's a listing presentation by way of website. It's like a sales funnel as a listing presentation. It's designed so that a seller can go there and it gives them basically the whole presentation in an automated fashion. But in this case here, because I've listed out all this marketing, these for sale by owner sellers will find it useful. Oh, here's where you do the pictures. Here's what kind of pictures to do. Here's how to do this and that and all of the other stuff. But what's really happening is they're being indoctrinated into, wow, this guy's got a really good package. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to get signed up to get all this stuff. What if I just use this guy? That's going to be subtle in their mind. But that's why It's in this script because it's adding a little bit more value, but I intend to push them to my automated listing site later on in the follow-up, in my email responders, in my text autoresponders and everything. I'm pushing them to that automated website that allows them to actually set an appointment or list the property with me in an automated way. Even though you're offering them free stuff like the video and the marketing page and all of that kind of stuff, you still have to pitch and sell free stuff to people. People won't take free stuff unless it's sold. You still have to sell it even though it's free. All right, the next line here, I want to help you because there's a good chance you could probably do it. And then if for some reason in a month you decide to list with an agent, I'd like to be that agent. Does that make sense? So that there keeps you in alignment with the seller. Remember, we talked about rapport and staying in alignment. That keeps you in alignment because you're still in alignment with their goals of trying to sell it on their own, but it gives you credibility and it removes skepticism about why you would want to help them. This whole time of offering them free stuff and free help, they know somewhere there's a catch, right? They're not stupid. And this is what gives you your credibility back of why you would be helping them there. You're letting them know what's in it for you, but also what's in it for them, right? So I want to help you because there's a good chance you can get it sold on your own. That gives you massive rapport right there and a little bit of encouragement for them. And they start to trust you a little bit because of that. But then you're also very honest with them. And then if for some reason in a month or so you decide to list with an agent, I'd like to be that agent. Does that make sense? See my trial close right there? If they say, yeah, that makes sense, you're in good shape. They're continuing to say yes to you. And you've just shown yourself to have integrity and not be kind of slimy or anything else, where you've let your intentions be known and you've let them know what your desire is or why you're doing this, right? With your permission, I'd like to follow up in a week or so to see how you're doing. Is that all right with you? That lets them know to expect you to follow up. Also, you're asking their permission, which further sets you apart from the other agents out there that are just bowling over them. But you've asked permission to follow up, so they're much more likely to be receptive to the follow-up when it arrives. Also, you're highly likely to get another yes right here because you just gave them something 20 seconds before that. So they're very likely to give you permission to follow up with them. Section number 5, selling without an agent. Let me ask you, just curious, what was your thought process on deciding to sell it on your own without an agent? So it isn't really anything against agents or commissions as much as you simply netting the most amount of money at closing. Is that right? I get that. So if there was a financial benefit to working with a broker, would you consider that option? This section here reframes the seller's decision from selling on their own to netting the most amount of money. That is the purpose of this section, is to reframe their thinking from, oh, I have to sell on my own, to, well, really, I just want to net the most amount of money and I don't care who sells it. So it's a reframe there. Notice that first line there. Let me ask you, just curious. So you see the pattern interrupt there? Let me ask you. And then a disarm comes right after that. Just curious. What was your thought process, right? So a pattern interrupt, it disarms right off the bat. And also it establishes their reasoning in the first place. Their reasoning so that you understand where they were originally coming from, whether it's, oh, I don't think I need an agent to sell it, or this, or whatever reason they came up with to decide to sell it on their own. Whatever that reason is, you're reframing it into netting the most amount of money, which is probably what it really boils down to anyway. But you have to paraphrase their reason back to them so they understand that you understood, even though you're about to reframe it. Always paraphrase it back to them so that it doesn't feel like you're shoehorning them into netting the most amount of money. It's important to rephrase it. Don't forget to do that, or it'll seem like you're forcing them into something else. They're not dumb, and they can feel you pushing them if they don't feel like you heard them. So it isn't really anything against agents or commissions as much as you simply netting the most amount of money at closing. Is that right? That's the reframe right there. They need to agree, or you've got to reframe again and ask for agreement. You can't just say it and slam them into it. That's why I say, is that right? Or it's formed as a question, because they have to agree with your reframe. Otherwise, it doesn't work. So they just said, okay, yeah, I want to net the most amount of money. Your next line after that, I get that. You're staying in rapport, you're staying in alignment. If there was a financial benefit to working with a broker, would you consider that option? That's a soft close right there. The previous lines cleared the way for this close. It opens the door for the next section, where your job is to make an airtight, logical case of why it makes financial sense to work with a broker. They just said right here they'd be willing to if it made financial sense. So now your job is clear to make an airtight, logical case of why that is so. So in section number 5 here, only now, after establishing rapport, giving them something to help them, and being in alignment, do you start asking them about why they're selling on their own. You cannot do it until their defenses are down. It's just like in Star Wars, where you can't attack the Death Star until the shields are down. It's the same exact thing. So this section also reframes the seller's decision from selling on their own to netting the most amount of money. Again, you're reframing their thinking. So we've just reframed for them, oh, it's not really that I need to sell on my own as much as I want to net the most amount of money. You just moved the frame to netting the most amount of money. Commission section. Do you mind if we go back to talking about saving on commissions real quick? When you first decided to sell your home without an agent, you were probably thinking in terms of saving 6% commission, right? That's a pretty substantial amount, and at first glance, it makes a lot of sense. However, what it actually looks like when you break it down is you're still paying a cooperating buyer's agent 3%. You'll still end up spending 1 to 1.5% marketing your property with MLS access, social promotion, digital syndication, and the rest. That means you're really saving about 1.5% in commission. When it's all said and done, in the case of your house, that translates to about $7,000, but you've now taken on the job of a listing agent, which includes the photos and videos, managing, setting up, and being there for the showings, qualifying buyers, marketing contracts, legal disclosures and liability, title company issues, etc. And let's not forget negotiating. Remember when I asked you if you would come off that price by $25,000? Selling on your own, you'd be saving about $7,000, but you gave up $25,000 in less than 3 minutes. It's my job to negotiate the buyer and their agents up to your asking price. All of that being said, can you see how you'd actually make more money with an agent like me and be able to turn over all that unpleasant work, including the marketing budget? I pay for all that up front, and it is truly amazing. Let's break this down. Do you mind if we go back to talking about saving on commissions real quick? You're asking, so the seller's giving you permission here to make this airtight, logical case that keeps you in rapport. And if they say no, or they try to blow you off or something like that, go to the next line, but start with, let me ask you. It's a more subtle form of permission. It's a pattern interrupt, yes, but also if they don't explicitly give you the permission, just go to the next line, let me ask you. It'll still feel like a subtle form of permission. And it's a pattern interrupt again. Now you say real quick here in this line also, in case they're becoming impatient, because now you've been on the phone with them 5-6 minutes at this point, and you've just run them through thinking and reworking how they've been thinking about the selling process in their house. And sometimes that can make people a little bit uncomfortable because they've come to their own conclusion and then they don't know what to do. So you may need to start moving through, and you just say, hey, can we go over commissions real quick? because they may get a little nervous about that when you start mentioning commissions. But just real quick, when you first decided to sell your home without an agent, so this line here sets the original seller frame. That was their original thinking. And you're acknowledging that and reminding them of what they were thinking because you're about to reframe it. So it keeps you in rapport and allows you, like I said, to reframe without making them wrong or feel stupid. Because at this point, the light might be turning on and it might be dawning on them, and they may feel a little dumb. However, what it actually looks like when you break it down is, so this line here, you're going to kind of do with a teaching tone or a revealing tone, like you're revealing something to them or teaching them. And this is the reframe right here, where you've led them the whole way and now they're about to draw their own conclusion, and you're just breaking it down in a teaching or a revealing tone. And what this actually is right here, we're shrinking, or we're actually compressing the savings that they thought that they were going to have. We're just compressing that 6% into 1.5%. So we've just laid it out to them, and now we're drawing them to the conclusion. That means you're actually just saving 1.5% when it's all said and done. And bam, then we're putting that number in there of what the actual dollar number is at 1.5% would be for their dollar size house. But we're also reminding them here, you're only saving a little bit compared to what you thought, but you're now taking on a job to save that little bit of money also. So you have to let them know, not only is the amount you're saving smaller, but you just took on a job. And that job may not be worth it for that little bit of money right there. And let's not forget negotiating. So remember in the flexibility section of the script where we set the trap, this line is what springs that trap that we set in the previous section. So that information that they told us, hey, can you come off by 25,000 or something like that? We're going to bring that info right here. We're going to plug in the actual dollar amount. So selling on your own would be saving you $7,000, but you gave up $25,000 in less than 3 minutes, right? So this is why we get them to agree to reduce the price in the earlier section, and why it's so critical, because this is where we plug that number in. And this makes the airtight logical case, because not only did we compress their savings to a very small amount and give them a job in return, but now we just took away any savings plus a lot more because they weren't an experienced agent in negotiating. And it's very powerful. The light bulb will go off for them that I'm about to do all this work, and this guy just talked me down 25,000 in 30 seconds, and I thought I was saving this, but now I have this job and I just gave all that money up anyway. Maybe I shouldn't be the one doing this. You're not telling them that. They're coming to that conclusion on their own, and it's very important that they draw their own conclusion on that. And that's where you come right back after remember how I had asked you about the price? And okay, selling on your own, we immediately have to follow that section up with an expert tone and confidence that, well, it's my job to negotiate the buyer and their agents up to your asking price. Meaning the mistake that they just made, it's your job to make sure that they get the price that they want. You have to have a confident tone. It establishes the financial benefit to working with you in particular. It opens the door to considering working with you as established in the previous section. And it's a subtle pitch also to work with you without you actually saying it. And it paves the way for the closing that's coming up here in a second. Section 7, how long will you wait to try and sell it on your own before hiring an agent? So if the home doesn't sell, how long do you think you'll try to sell it on your own before you consider finding the right agent for the job of selling it for you? Usually they're going to say 4 weeks. Almost always it's 4 weeks. That's great. Most of my listing clients who try to sell on their own usually wait about 1 to 3 weeks before listing with me. I'd say that about 12 to 25% of those people I talk to do eventually sell on their own. Let me ask you, If you were to list the home, who would you list with? So section 7, how long will you wait, plants the seed that it might not sell. It gets them to acknowledge acceptance of the possibility of using an agent, and it sets their timeline. You're gonna need to know this. That's why we didn't just jump right to the closing. And there's a soft close in here also again. So you're gonna need to know their timeline. Whatever their timeline is, if they say 4 weeks, cut that timeline in half. 4 weeks is the usual answer, like I said. So in 2 weeks, you really need to be getting a listing appointment through your follow-ups and other things. I would say maybe 20% of the time you'll get it off the first call, but usually it's going to be the follow-up call or the one after that where you're going to get the actual listing appointment. Okay, so most of my listing clients who try to sell on their own usually wait about 1 to 3 weeks before listing with me. So notice I use the word try. It's a very subtle way to shake the seller's confidence in selling on their own. And it implies that you list a lot of homes. It implies that most for sale by owners list with you, and it sets the expectation of when they should list with you. I'd say about 12 to 25% of people I talk to eventually sell on their own. So that line there encourages them that it is possible, so that's keeping you in rapport with them, but it also implies that their chances are not very good. Let me ask you, if you were to list the home, who would you list with? Notice the pattern interrupt there again because I'm about to make a proposal. This is a soft close. And it also, you'll know at this point if there is another agent in the picture. Not that you need to worry about it, but at least you know what the situation is. And if they know someone, if there's some friend or something else, it lets you know if you're going to have to push a bit harder for that for the actual listing appointment. If they say your name when you ask this question, you are golden. You're there. You're closed, basically. You still have to actually close to get the appointment time and date. But if they say your name at the end of this script, you're gold. You just have to stay in rapport with them. You have to keep in constant contact with them and close for the appointment time and date. The next section is the closing sequence. Now, the closing sequence, I'm going to do a separate special bonus video for that because it is a special close. I call it the lock close. I learned it from Heath Powell. I'm going to do a separate video just to keep the length of module 2 to a reasonable level. So look for my closing sequence bonus video to learn section 8, which is the closing sequence. So that's it. That's the for sale by owner script. It is a one of a kind. Nobody else is using this script. This is the script that I've used and developed, and it's proven, it works. It's very subtle. It does require a degree of skill, so you may have to go back and watch module 2 several times. You're going to also have to role play this script. You can't just read it and internalize it. You have to say it out loud. When you speak out loud, even if you're by yourself, people are probably going to think you're insane, but your ears are actually hearing the sound. So it's going back into the brain by audio. You're seeing it. It's multiple modes, and it helps to memorize a little bit faster. Memorize each section. That's why each section is broken down on its own page. Notice it's not too long. It's much easier to learn when you break it down in pieces and when you understand why you're actually saying what you're saying. And that's also going to keep you from skipping sections. I've had a lot of students in the past that didn't understand why they were saying things, so they just started cutting things out of their script, and then they couldn't understand why it didn't work. Remember, like we said, now that you've gone all the way through it, you can see how one section relies on the other section or sets up a section after that. This script is amazing. I hope it does amazing things for you. I want to thank you for being on this training with me. I hope that you will put the time in to memorize and especially internalize this script and then make it into your voice. So again, my name is Tim Brooks. I'm so glad you were here, and I hope to see you in module 3, where we're actually going to watch me make live calls using this script so you can see it in action. You can see it in the wild. You can see when it's successful. You can see some of my mistakes so that you know that you're doing fine, and here's what it actually sounds like. And it doesn't always go perfect, But when it does go perfect, there's certain patterns or milestones along the way in the call that you can detect using those trial closes and staying in rapport. You'll be able to detect those patterns. So we're going to see that, and we're going to actually break that down in Module 3. See you then.